The first time the world held its breath for him, he was 16 years old, in a cave, and it nearly broke him. The second time, it was here. Not a cave. The center of everything. The place every child he had ever known spent their whole small lives learning to want. He stood in the middle of it, and nothing moved. Not the rain, not the towers, not the thousands of people caught mid-step around him, like a held note that would never be allowed to end. And at his feet, someone was dying. He did not know that yet. He did not even know the man's name. I do. I have had a long time to learn it, and a longer time to wish I hadn't. Be patient with me. It is crueler that way. And this story has only ever known the one kind of mercy, the kind that comes too late. He left Cathedral in the gray hour before anyone woke, the way he did everything, quietly, before the thanks could find him. He told himself he was going for Bilo, for answers, for some way to give the old man back the eyes he had cost him. That was true. It was also the easiest lie he knew, wearing a kinder coat. They called it center, the way you call the sun the light. Not a name, just the thing everything else pointed at. Cyfer had pointed at it his whole life, without once looking straight at it. Up close, it had a different name, an older one, that its own people used and the orphans never learned. The Knave. They built it tall because the ground was spoken for. They built it deep for the same reason. He had spent 16 years learning how to be alone. The Knave taught him in a single afternoon that there is a worse thing, to be alone in a crowd that will never once stop to notice that you are. And underneath all of it, far down, where the old machines still breathed, the wells, he could hear them now. That was new. That was the cold gift the cave had left him. He heard the shape of things, the way a sharper, colder version of himself, somewhere, always had. Someone was closing the wells one by one. He did not yet know who, or that it mattered. He filed it away. He filed everything away. The famous ones, the Knave kept high. Zva had left Cathedral 9 years before Cyfer ever walked its halls. Left his name behind him like a coat he'd outgrown and never wrote, and became, in the telling, in the long winters, the proof the rest of them held on to, that a child from nowhere could climb all the way to the center of the world. He had. That was the trouble. He had climbed all the way up, and there was almost nothing left of the boy who started. Cathedral, Zva said, when Cyfer named it. He said it the way you'd name a town you drove through once, years ago. Atu's still alive, still counting the grain. He smiled. It was a good smile. It did not reach anywhere at all. You'll want to forget that place if you're staying. Nobody up here got up here by remembering where they slept. And Cyfer, who gave everything away until there was nothing left of him, looked at a man who had given everything up until there was nothing left of him. And for the first time since the cave, something moved behind the cold. Recognition, the worst kind, the kind you only ever find in a mirror. He should have left then. He told himself he stayed for Bilo, that a man this high in the Knave could find a healer, open a door, help. He stayed because of the mirror. Because if there was a way back for Zva, then there was a way back for him. So he watched. He was always good at watching, and the cold mind the cave had given him did what it now did without being asked. It took everything it saw, the man, the wells, the closing, the smile that didn't reach, the small, wrong tremor under the floor, and it ran them forward, all the way to the end. The world held its breath. The dust stopped, and in the silence where only he could move, Cyfer Wu did the arithmetic of a man's whole life and saw exactly where it stopped. He saw how Zva would die. He saw nearly when. It is one thing to lose someone. It is another thing entirely to be handed the date. And the cruelest part, the part I have never once made peace with, is that the mind sharp enough to see it coming was not in the end sharp enough to bend it. He tried to warn him. Of course he did. It was the one thing he had always been able to do. See the danger first and push the other person out of its way. But he told it the way the cold mind told everything. Flat, exact, certain. The wells, the closing, what it would cost him. A date, almost. And Zva heard what anyone would hear from a stranger reciting their death like a sum, a threat, or a madman. Or worst of all, a boy from the place he'd spent 9 years burying come to drag him back down into it. "Get out," Zva said, quietly. The good smile gone. "Whatever you are now, get out." And Cyfer went. Because he always went. Because being gone before the trouble landed was the very first thing he ever learned. He had come to the nave to find a boy he remembered. He understood now that the boy had been gone for years, and that the cold thing in him, the gift, the cure he'd come looking for, had just made certain the man would follow. That was the loss. Not a death. Not yet. It was the moment he learned that the sharper he became, the more surely he would break the very things he reached for. He did not gain a power that day. The world does not pay you for the losses you only let yourself half feel. He left Zva's door and walked back down into the crowd, one more body in the held note, and he was, as he had always asked to be, completely alone. Except he wasn't. He hadn't been since the cave. Somewhere behind the cold, the other one was awake now. The sharp one. The one who had run the arithmetic of a man's death without flinching. And there was room in there. Cyfer was beginning to understand. Room for more than two. And out ahead of him, fixed, patient, already counting down, a date he had read in a single frozen second and could not unread. A man he had just pushed further toward it. A death he could see coming the way you see weather in the northwest. Far off, and certain, and aimed. Far under the nave, in the dark, where the wells were closing one by one, something that had been draining downward for longer than there have been names for it, stopped draining and began very slowly to rise. I told you, the only mercy this story has ever known is the kind that comes too late.